Lily's first date came with 3 chairs. Jack showed up, with his mother beside him. She almost walked out, but that night became the sweetest memory of her life. Hey, Soul Stories fam! We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Please comment on where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. The clock blinked to 3:43 p.m. as Lily carried her 4th cup of coffee back to her desk. The bitterness slid down her throat like a yanked handbrake, keeping her eyelids from crashing shut after a dragging presentation. The screen blurred with columns and dancing charts. The cursor blinked as if prodding her along, while her body only wanted to slip off the chair and disappear under the desk. Careful or you'll launch out of that chair on caffeine, Vanessa teased, reaching for the stapler on Lily's desk. The white lights on the 14th floor shone down, turning her friend's brown hair into a sleek streak. Better that than nodding off while the campaign's reach keeps dropping, Lily answered, taking another sip. After this morning's meeting, my brain feels vacuum sealed. Vanessa perched on the edge of the desk, one eyebrow up. So, how was last night? Don't tell me it had the usual ending. Lily rolled her eyes. Same old script. Half the time he talked about his new car, the other half he was glued to his phone. I reminded him my mom was sick last week. He checked his watch like his time was more precious. A true gentleman, Vanessa deadpanned. Conclusion. Another candidate for the Museum of Disappointments. Lily laughed and ran a finger across a tiny spine on the cactus pot at the desk edge. Fine then. And these 3 will live happily ever after. They never cancel at the last minute. Another perk. They don't leave your texts on scene, Vanessa chimed in, her eyes lit with mischief. Speaking of your mom, I honestly don't get why so many men are rude to the very person who gave them life. Lily went quiet for a few seconds, remembering dinner with an ex. Him, grimacing, and telling his mother to stop rehashing the past, the whole table turning to stone. She sighed. If I ever go on a date again, Lily raised her cup like making an oath, I'll bring my mom along. Let's see if he actually respects women. Vanessa burst out laughing. Opening scene. Hi, this is my mother. Round 1 of the interview starts now. They giggled. The clack of keyboards, a printer spitting pages somewhere. The whole floor felt like an office orchestra playing its daily score. Lily didn't notice that on the other side of the partition, someone had frozen with his hands over the keyboard and looked up. The glare on thin frames made his eyes a quiet pin of light. He was Jack Miller, the soft-spoken programmer, so quiet that people often forgot he existed in the hallway. You promised, Vanessa reminded her. Next time you've got a date, call me to be the referee. More like the color commentator than the ref, Lily shot back. She turned to her screen, refocusing on the campaign budget sheet, but the corner of her mouth still curled at that silly joke. A pressure release line that usually evaporated along with the smell of coffee. Down the row, the AC gave a soft hiss. Overhead, strip lights spread an even glow. Lily took one last sip, set the cup down, and began checking the slides. Across the way, Jack bent his head, fingers gliding over the trackpad. The rims of his ears faintly flushed as if he'd just stored away a strange line of code. Lily didn't know that words tossed into the air sometimes land in a heart that's been waiting for a map. And she didn't know that her joke about bringing mom on a date had just crossed the border from throwaway fun into real-world impact. Hook. She didn't know that one sentence would make a man change his entire dating plan. The next morning, when the elevator opened onto the 14th floor, Lily paused half a beat. Through a gap between partitions, she caught sight of Jack's desk, and for the first time really noticed it. Everything looked like a still-life model. Books squared to the edges, post-its color banded by topic, 2 pens laid parallel, their tips pointing neatly to the right, as if someone had measured them with a ruler. Jack sat slightly hunched, shoulders drawn in, as though trying to take up less space. His screen was a stack of tabs full of letters and symbols, lines of code stretching out like a secret language. He typed fast but quietly, the keystrokes like steady raindrops. Sometimes he paused, knit his brows for exactly 1 second, then typed again, the rhythm of someone who knows exactly where he's going. Human robot, someone whispered near the coffee machine. Lily heard it and reflexively glanced over. Jack didn't react. He rarely reacted to anything. But for some reason, today she noticed a very slight curve at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, more like a hesitant punctuation mark. In the quick morning check-in, Lily sat across from Jack at the long table. The team talked about metrics, budget, and KPIs. Jack said nothing. When the lead asked if there was any way to reduce the landing page load time, a few people offered predictable ideas. Jack still stayed quiet. As the discussion was about to move on, he cleared his throat and spoke very softly. If we compress images to display size instead of original, drop non-essential scripts above the fold, and defer modules by behavior, we can shave off more than 2 seconds. The whole room turned to look. The lead said, "Sounds good." Jack gave the tiniest nod and pulled his hands back into his lap, like he'd just set a small stone on the table and stepped away. Lily watched him. His answer was short, precise, and perfectly placed. No fluff, no showboating. She jotted it down and realized she was smiling. There was something about that economy of words that made her feel safe, as if this was someone who wouldn't make empty promises and then forget. By noon, the printer near Lily's desk started sulking. A sheet jammed halfway through, the edge chewed ragged. She reached in to tug it free, the paper squeaking in protest. Vanessa walked by. "See? Even the printer's over it." Lily laughed, helpless. She opened the tray, pulled the cartridge, and gave it a shake. No luck. When Lily turned back to her screen to send the file to another printer, the stubborn machine suddenly whirred, swallowed the jammed pages, and spit out a neat stack of clean reports as if nothing had ever gone wrong. She froze. On the lid lay a small slip of paper, the handwriting careful. "It's working now." Lily looked up. The row ahead was empty. Through the glass, she caught Jack's back as he headed to his seat, his pace brisk but not hurried. A glint slid across his frames. He didn't look back. No explanation needed. "No, I just helped you." Vanessa popped her head in, eyebrows waggling when she saw the note. "Guardian angel of printers?" "Maybe. Just someone who knows how to fix things," Lily answered, hearing her own voice soften. In the afternoon, while the whole floor hummed like a beehive, Lily noticed more small details. Whenever someone dropped a pen, Jack was the one to pick it up. When someone needed an outlet, he nudged the power strip closer. If the glass door stuck, he adjusted the track, wiped the dust, then vanished like he'd never been there. Not the flashy, gallant kind, just a quiet habit of making sure things were already working. "Human robot," the teasing call rose again from the pantry corner. Lily turned, ready to give a polite smile, but declined with a small shake of her head. To her, the words suddenly felt off-key. If he were a robot, who would remember to cut a script so the team's page loads faster? If he were a robot, who would leave such a gentle little note? She returned to her desk and pinned the tiny slip to the edge of her monitor, right beside the cactus. Somehow the space between the partitions felt less rigid. Somewhere nearby, a person was living by his own rhythm. Slow, orderly, courteous, but not at all unfeeling. And Lily realized that in an office full of loud voices, the thing that tipped her heart might just be a small note written in blue ink. "It's working now." By mid-afternoon, the office was filled with a kind of gentle noise. The low hum of the printer, the soft roll of chair wheels, the faint clink of spoons against cups in the pantry. Lily was going through the final checklist for next week's campaign launch when a shadow stopped by her desk. She looked up. Jack was standing there, gripping his employee badge as if it were a lucky charm. The lanyard trembled slightly with his breathing. A small white glare from the overhead light flickered across the rim of his thin glasses. "Hi, Lily," he began, his voice low and slightly rough, like he'd just broken through some invisible wall to get here. "Hi, Jack," she replied, offering a polite but warm smile. "Do you need any help?" Jack swallowed, his gaze flicking briefly to her screen before returning, as if reminding himself not to get distracted. No. I mean, yes. He hesitated, his thumb tapping the edge of his badge. "I was wondering, if you're free tomorrow night, would you like to Have dinner? The question came out neatly, without stumbling, yet it was clear he'd rehearsed each word in his head 100 times. Lily met his pale blue eyes behind the glasses. There was something both determined and fragile in them. She couldn't help but smile, feeling a new breeze drift through the tidy rows of desks. Tomorrow night, she repeated, giving time a chance to catch up with his words. Yeah, 7 o'clock, Jack said, then almost immediately added, but if you're busy, we could change the time. Or the day, or if you don't like crowded places, we could go somewhere quieter. I know a small restaurant downtown, soft music, short menu. Lily laughed at his adorably meticulous planning. No flair, no fancy words, just quiet arrangements to make someone else comfortable. 7's good, she nodded. That place sounds nice. A look of relief flashed across Jack's face, like a drizzle had just stopped. He relaxed his hands, the badge no longer bent in his grip. Good. I'll text you the address. Okay, Lily said, watching him take a step back. See you tomorrow night. Jack nodded, polite and a bit hurried, before heading back to his desk. When his figure disappeared behind the partition, a soft whoosh sounded beside her. Vanessa materialized as if by magic, eyes wide as shiny coins. Hold up, she whispered, clutching Lily's desk edge. Did I just see Jack Miller ask you out? And you said yes, like for real? Not a 3 p.m. daydream from caffeine fatigue? Lily laughed. Very real. He was perfectly polite. Vanessa gasped. You actually said yes to the guy who calculated the optimal coffee brewing time for the office? So what? Lily raised an eyebrow, keeping her face straight. I've met worse. Vanessa pressed a hand to her forehead theatrically. I'm doomed. Where is this going to end? Let's pray he doesn't bring a GPU to dinner. You're impossible, Lily nudged her playfully. He's kind. Kind. I'll give you that, Vanessa said, raising her hands in surrender. Then she lowered her voice conspiratorially. But you have to text me constantly, okay? Emergency code, cactus emoji. Please, Lily chuckled. I'm not heading into the woods. Better safe than sorry, Vanessa muttered, though a rounded smile finally formed on her lips. All right, fine. I admit it. There's something likable. When Vanessa left, Lily sat back and opened the company chat window. A small notification popped up. Jack Miller. Here's the address. 7 o'clock. I'll reserve a table. Below was the name of a restaurant she'd never heard of. A name that sounded warm and intimate. No cluttered link, no long directions. Just enough for her to show up at the right place. Lily rested her chin on her hand, rereading it 3 times. Above her, the little note, still alive beside the cactus plant, swayed gently in the air conditioning. She felt a faint flutter of excitement, the kind that doesn't take your breath away, but makes you want to pick a sleeker dress, a warmer shade of lipstick. She tapped like on his message and typed, "See you then." The small typing bubble appeared. Jack was replying, then vanished, true to his habit of conserving words even in text. Lily let out a quiet laugh. Calm but not cold. Brief but never brusque. She closed her notebook and took a sip of cool water. The rest of the afternoon slipped by peacefully, as if a long-lost gear inside her had finally clicked into place. Before leaving work, a message from Vanessa popped up. Outfit for tonight? Lily replied. Nothing too fancy. I want to feel comfortable. The typing dots lingered, then Vanessa sent 3 dress photos with the caption, comfortable, but unforgettable for at least a week. Lily smiled, choosing a navy V-neck dress with a soft drape. In the small office restroom mirror, she looked more awake, not from caffeine, but from a harmless curiosity. She tied her hair low, let a few strands fall naturally, and dabbed on a warm lipstick. When the elevator glided down, her heartbeat kept a perfect rhythm. What she didn't know was that, across town at that very moment, a man was quietly checking his dinner reservation for the 3rd time, and a graceful woman was choosing her favorite pearl necklace. Lily only knew one thing. She was ready for dinner, and she had no idea that that night 3 chairs would be pulled out at the same table. The restaurant glowed with a warm gold that reflected off the thick glass, making the room inside seem calm and refined. Lily pushed the door open and drew a deep breath to steady the drum of her heart. She had arrived on time, early enough to get used to the scent of polished wood and the soft clink of silverware somewhere nearby. She glanced around for Jack. Not yet. A server politely invited her to wait near the host stand, where a small flower pot sat beside the day's menu. Lily adjusted her bag strap and kept a composed smile. Just a simple evening, she told herself. Sit, talk, go home. No need to expect too much. The bell over the door chimed. Lily looked up. Jack appeared in a deep blue shirt, the silver rims of his glasses catching the light in a thin gleam. But what made Lily freeze wasn't the shirt or the faint smile. It was the woman beside him, a poised, elegant lady with her hair neatly coiled low, a delicate pearl necklace at her throat, and a measured, unhurried step. The two of them stopped in front of Lily. "Lily," Jack said, voice even, "this is my mother, Margaret." The brief space between those few words widened like a quiet corridor. Lily caught the hush of the AC and the soft glide of staff shoes across the floor. She pressed her lips together for an instant, then smiled politely and dipped her head in greeting. The lady smiled back, her gaze warm as a cup of tea. She stepped forward half a pace, opening her arms just enough not to overwhelm. "Hello, dear. I'm Jack's mother." Her voice was gentle and clear, and Lily felt her shoulders let go. It's very nice to meet you." "Ma'am?" Lily said, still unsure how to address her, though the uncertainty hid behind an honest smile. Jack leaned toward the host and gave a small signal. The server approached with pen and pad ready. He took in the three of them at a glance, then asked in a professional tone that couldn't quite mask a flicker of surprise in his eyes, "A table for three?" Jack nodded, as calm as if this had always been the plan. "Yes, my little family tonight." The words drifted down, light as a leaf. Lily paused, then let out a quiet, surprised laugh that stayed caught in her throat. Margaret smiled too, tilting her head as if to commend her son's discreet wit. The server led the way. The three followed, the distance between them kept at a courteous length. At the table, Jack pulled out a chair for his mother first, then for Lily. Small gestures, unshowy, consistent, mirroring his steady nature. Lily sat, set her bag by her chair leg, and rested both palms on her lap to remind herself to breathe evenly. The initial air felt a touch stiff, like a brand new tablecloth with no creases yet. Lily looked to Jack. He kept his familiar composure, eyes attentive and calm. She looked to Margaret. The lady answered with an encouraging smile, the kind that understood awkwardness wasn't a flaw, just a gentle step before everything settled into place. The server poured water. The sound slipped softly into the glasses. Lily lowered her gaze to the rippling surface, searching for a suitably safe opener. She turned to Jack, ready to say something about the weather or traffic, but Margaret's hand had already come to rest on the edge of the napkin as she spoke, light as a thread. "Thank you for being on time. I value punctuality." Lily nodded. "I do as well, ma'am." Then she smiled at Jack and saw his shoulders drop a fraction, as if he'd let out a quiet breath. A moment passed and no one forced it to hurry. Lily began to sense the evening's unusual rhythm. Everything seemed to move slowly, not sluggish, but slow enough to actually see one another. Her awkwardness didn't vanish at once, yet the sharp edge of it softened. The server returned to confirm the reservation details. "3 tonight, correct?" Jack answered in the same even tone. "Yes, 3. Then turned to Lily with a look that was part apology, part assurance. He didn't explain, didn't blame a misunderstanding, didn't scramble for excuses. He simply accepted the fact that there were 3 of them this evening, and he had chosen to stand in the middle, steadying both sides through the uneasy spots. Lily set her thumb on the rim of her glass and gave it the slightest turn. She noticed her heartbeat had found a steadier pace. Before tonight began, she'd promised herself to keep things simple. Now, simple included an extra chair, a warm greeting, and a sentence that had made the whole table quietly chuckle. "Yes, my little family tonight." That was enough for a beginning. The rest, if it came, would arrive in its time. Once everyone had settled, the water glasses were filled, and the room's temperature had rediscovered its own warmth. Tonight, Lily would simply note what was in front of her. Jack, composed; Margaret, gracious; and herself. learning how to relax in a strange situation without feeling unsafe. She leaned back slightly and glanced out through the window, where a streetlight blinked with a gentle pulse. In her mind, a simple line surfaced, not quite a question. All right, like this, I can keep going. And she smiled more fully this time, ready to step past the first layer of awkwardness and move through the rest of the evening exactly as it was meant to be. The waiter stepped back after setting the glasses precisely in place, leaving three faint, transparent rings on the tablecloth. The soft yellow light from the lampshade fell over the table, smoothing away the last traces of awkwardness. Lily touched the rim of her glass and took a slow breath. Across from her, Margaret folded her hands together, palms down, like a storyteller about to open the first chapter. "I hear you work in marketing," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "I've always found it fascinating how a single phrase or image can nudge someone's heart slightly to the left or the right." Lily paused for a beat, then smiled. "Yes, I think my job is to move people just enough, so they take the rest of the steps themselves. We measure all sorts of things: views, click-throughs, time on page. But what I love most is that sense of being just enough." "Just enough," Margaret repeated, her eyes lighting up. "That's a beautiful concept. I taught literature for many years. I know the feeling of stopping before breaking a sentence." She turned to Jack, tilting her head in a quiet act of introduction. "My son also likes things just enough, though sometimes a little too much of just enough." Jack exhaled, almost a laugh. "Mom." "All right." Margaret raised her hand, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "It's not a bad thing. I only meant some things people call eccentricity are really just respect for the world." Lily felt her shoulders loosen, warmth spreading like steam from a teacup. "What do you read, ma'am?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Poetry," Margaret replied, "because poetry never hurries, and novels, because they let us live slowly inside another life." "And you?" "I read a mix," Lily said. "Lately I've gone back to poetry. When days are full of spreadsheets, poems feel like an escape." "Do you have a favorite line?" Margaret leaned in, lowering her voice as if afraid to startle a small bird. Lily thought for a moment. "There's one simple line I love. We pass through each other, leaving the scent of wet grass. I don't remember who wrote it, but that feeling is enough to make me stay a little longer." "Beautiful," Margaret nodded. "Perhaps tonight is one of those moments, too." Jack sat between their voices, eyes moving slowly, listening without interrupting. The waiter returned to take their order. Margaret chose salmon, Jack went for steak with greens, Lily picked the orange-glazed chicken. When the waiter left, Margaret took a sip of water and steered the conversation toward Lily with the gentle precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime teaching others how to begin. "How did you start in your field?" "I've loved storytelling since I was little," as Lily said. "In college, I interned and never left. I think people don't remember data points, but they remember a face, a timely phrase." "Exactly," Margaret smiled. "I always told my students, words must be heavy enough not to blow away, yet light enough for the reader to want to carry them." Jack glanced at his mother, lips twitching. "She hasn't told the story yet," he murmured, as if issuing a warning he didn't really mean. "Oh, right," Margaret exclaimed. "Lily, when he was 8, he wrote a letter to the little girl next door. 4 lines exactly. 'When we grow up, if you agree, I'll build you a house with a bookshelf and big windows. Signed, your future husband.'" "Oh my God," Lily burst out laughing, covering her mouth to keep from laughing too loud. She turned to Jack, catching his faint blush, his gaze retreating behind his glasses. "It was a blueprint," Jack said softly, unable to hide the gentle self-defense in his tone. "With an illustration, too." "Indeed," Margaret confirmed solemnly, as if under oath. "He drew the window facing east so that, quote, the light can come in on cold mornings." She lowered her voice. "The girl moved away eventually, but I still have that drawing." Lily found herself smiling with her whole face. It had been a long time since a small story had gone straight to her heart without knocking first. "I think if someone at 8 already thought about bookshelves and windows," she said, "that person can make any room feel like home." Margaret nodded, her smile content, like someone witnessing a perfect equation. I believe so. The food arrived. The smell of seared steak, warm citrus zest, and roasted salmon lifted into the air. The clinking of cutlery kept the rhythm of their conversation steady. Margaret continued, not in an interview tone, but with each question laid like a stepping stone, making sure Lily never lost her footing. What do you do to balance the days filled with deadlines? I grow a few small plants, Lily said. I'm not good at it, but I'm more patient now. I think each sprout is a breathing exercise. Lovely, Margaret beamed. Jack grows things too. He's learned to be silent beside living things, a valuable skill. She shot him a teasing glance. And of course, sometimes he talks far too much about fertilizer. Jack laughed, truly laughed this time. Lily noticed his laughter was like a fingertip flicking the surface of water, brief, clear, not breaking the calm. The dinner unfolded with that same rhythm, questions that felt effortless, answers that didn't perform, bits of memory just enough to draw a path, not build a statue. Lily, Margaret said, when your work requires you to see others, how do you make sure you don't forget yourself? Lily reflected. I do small thing, she said. Turn off notifications for an hour, take a walk around the block, or buy a good loaf of bread. I'm not sure it counts as self-care, but it reminds me I still exist. A reply from someone who listens to herself, Margaret praised gently, then looked at Jack, a silent passing of the torch. And you? Jack rested the handle of his fork on the plate's edge. I fix what's broken, he said, his voice so sincere it made the words sound new. When I fix things, wires, circuits, gears, they go quiet, and so do I. Margaret met Lily's eyes as if to say, that's him. Lily nodded, her heartbeat slowing. She realized she was smiling, not the polite kind, not the social kind meant to please anyone, but a real one. For the first time in months, her mouth relaxed in the truest sense, like a door opening to the garden. When the plates were cleared, the waiter asked if they wanted dessert. Of course, Margaret said, her eyes sparkling like a child at a fair. 1 cinnamon apple pie and 1 chocolate mousse. 3 spoons. Lily laughed. I thought you didn't like sweets. I like watching others eat them, Margaret said serenely. That's sweet enough for me. The air around the table had grown completely warm. Each time Margaret brought up a piece of Jack's past, he used to be scared of tall slides. He once built a lie detector to find the cookie thief. His face deepened another shade of red. But instead of irritation, the embarrassment made him more human, more near. It also made Lily, trained to spot pretense, believe that tonight there wasn't any. And in that moment she noticed her laughter had changed. It was no longer sharp and short, like a knife slipping through a shell, but round and warm, like an apple resting in her palm. For the first time in many months, Lily laughed freely, because she believed this was a table where she could breathe in her own rhythm. Dessert arrived on a breeze of warm cinnamon and gentle chocolate. The server set 3 gleaming spoons along the rim of the plate, wished them a pleasant evening, and slipped away. The table seemed to draw itself in around a shared center. 1 apple tart in a cup of mousse as soft as clouds. Margaret nudged a spoon toward Lily. You try first. I like watching someone take the first bite. Lily smiled and scooped a small spoonful of mousse. The chocolate melted, not too sweet, leaving a faintly bitter finish that made her tongue want to chase another taste. She nodded, eyes widening like a child discovering a secret. Delicious. I guessed as much, Margaret said, pleased, then slid a spoon toward Jack with the fairness of a referee. Son? Jack took a bite of apple tart, chewing slowly, his gaze lowering as if he were reading a line of code. Apples are soft, butter just right, he concluded, succinct enough to make both women laugh. They traded plates and sampled again, letting the sweetness weave into their conversation like small high and low notes. Then when the laughter settled into a quiet warmth, Jack set his spoon down and leaned slightly toward Lily. The light caught his frames in a thin stroke, as if underlining the words about to come. By the way, his voice was calm as ever. When is your mother arriving? The air paused, held like a drawn-out fermata. Lily froze with her spoon halfway up, the chocolate trembling like a raindrop about to fall. My mother? She echoed, her heart skipping in surprise. She glanced at Margaret on instinct. The older woman was watching her with a soft look, as if she had already anticipated this bar of the song. Mm-hmm, Jack answered simply. You said, next time I'll bring my mom. So I thought, maybe tonight could be the time. A neat round silence rose up between the three of them, then slid back into place. And just then, like a film spooling backward, Lily clearly saw the office scene again. That fourth cup of coffee, Vanessa's teasing laugh, and her own mouth, tossing a carefree joke into the air. If I ever go on a date again, I'll bring my mom. She'd assumed it had fizzled like coffee foam. Turns out someone had picked it up, tucked it into his pocket, and carefully carried it to dinner. Lily covered her mouth. A soft pfta escaped. Then her shoulders began to shake, trying to hold it in. But the attempt felt like cupping a bird in her hands. It kept beating its wings. Her eyes stung, not from sadness, but from the endearing silliness sitting across from her. The truth lit up. Jack had listened, believed, and arranged an entire plan because of a joke. Margaret set down her spoon and tilted her head toward her son. Her look equal parts fond and resigned, the kind a mother wears after saying, I think you misheard, yet still letting her child follow his heart. Jack, sweetheart, she said softly, her voice threaded with a trace of laughter. I told you probably misheard. No one brings their mother to a first date. She was only joking. Jack blinked. A faint flush crossed his cheeks, but not the kind of red that wished to vanish from the earth. It was the color of someone who knows he's done something foolish, in a good way. He scratched the back of his neck, inhaled, and exhaled. Ah! He gave a small laugh, 2 syllables slipping out like half a step back. I understand. And that released the safety catch. Lily burst out laughing, an irrepressible pop, like a cork shooting from a bottle. Margaret laughed too, a ringing cascade that somehow still kept its poise. Their laughter interlaced and spread across the table like rippling water. A few nearby diners glanced over, not because it was loud, but because of the contagion, the kind of joy that makes strangers want to smile along. Lily dabbed the corner of her eyes. Oh my, she breathed. I'm sorry. What I mean is, that day I was just joking. I never thought anyone would. Bring his mother? Jack finished for her, his low voice still snagging on a laugh. Right. But I figured, if a joke could become a way to honor what you care about, it was worth trying. Margaret leaned in and nodded as though awarding points. Good answer, she praised, her gaze shifting to Lily. Sometimes destiny needs only a small misunderstanding. The words fell, touched the tabletop, and spread outward in rings. Lily drew a deep breath and felt a window open somewhere in her chest. She looked at Jack, the man who had brought his awkward hunch of apprehension into the light, exposing even his clumsiness, just to align himself with an offhand remark of hers, and realized that perhaps the rarest thing wasn't perfection, but the courage to misunderstand sincerely. Thank you, Lily said, not joking this time, for taking me at my word in the best possible way. Jack lifted a shoulder in the smallest shrug. I'm not good at reading subtext, he admitted. I just hear things and take them as they are, in case they're right. In case they're right, Lily echoed, smiling with her eyes. She slid the mousse toward him. You can finish the rest. That's not fair, Margaret protested in mock outrage. Now, share equally. Chocolate justice is the foundation of a civilized society. They laughed again. The last spoonfuls made their way from hand to hand. No need to measure with their eyes. They simply knew what enough was. Lily felt her heart as light as a tablecloth, smooth once more. The initial awkwardness had turned into a warmth she could name. Not random, rather the direct result of a misunderstanding welcomed with goodwill. As the server cleared the plates, Margaret tilted her head at the two of them, a smile lingering like the end of a fine verse. Tonight was lovely, she said. I love evenings where I don't have to try to talk much and still feel full. Lily nodded. So do I. Jack said nothing, looking down at his hands. but his hands had fully relaxed. No more pinching a card's edge. No more holding a spoon like a screwdriver. They rested easily on the linen, as if, at last, everything had started working. When they stood, Lily caught her reflection in the glass. A person smiling over an adorably off-kilter night. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring and wasn't in a rush to name anything, but she knew that right now, here, there was a man who had made her laugh to tears with nothing more than honest clumsiness. That night, when the restaurant door closed behind them, the aftertaste that lingered wasn't cinnamon or chocolate. It was a simple thought voiced by Margaret. Sometimes destiny needs only a small misunderstanding. Right person, right place, right time. And as Lily stepped out onto the street, she felt the city soften by half a note, as if agreeing with that truth. Soul Stories fam, if you're watching on another channel, come home to us, where tens of thousands of listeners and sharers come together. The next morning, the city awoke under a thin veil of clouds, like a gauze draped over its streets. Lily arrived at the office earlier than usual. She made herself a cup of coffee, but as the warm, bitter aroma rose, she realized she didn't really need it today. Her heart was already awake, in a different way, calm but bright. Vanessa burst in like a gust of wind, one arm clutching her laptop, the other jingling her car keys like a rattle. "Talk, now." "Immediately," she demanded, perching on the edge of Lily's desk, before even sitting down properly. "How was last night? Did you escape through a bathroom window? Did you send the cactus emoji for rescue?" Lily laughed, pulling out a chair for her friend. "No cactus needed, and no windows involved." "So?" Vanessa narrowed her eyes, lowering her voice as if about to hear a secret martial arts technique. "Spill." Lily set her cup down, fingers interlacing, then separating again as if arranging her thoughts. He was on time. Exactly on time. Navy shirt, silver-rimmed glasses, and she paused, unable to suppress the small smile forming at the corners of her lips. "He brought his mom." Vanessa straightened like she'd been shocked. "He brought his mother on the first date?" A couple of nearby co-workers looked up. Lily lowered her voice, pressing a finger to her lips. "Shh. Just hear me out." She gave a quick rundown. How Margaret had smiled. How she'd said, "Hello, dear, I'm Jack's mother." How the waiter had asked, "Table for 3?" And how Jack had calmly replied, "Yes, my little family tonight." Vanessa went from jaw drop to face palming to resting her chin on her hand, eyebrows furrowed in disbelief. "Sounds like a sitcom," she muttered. "And this is where the audience laughs through a speaker." "Yeah, kind of," Lily said, smiling, her eyes glowing. "But not loud. Warm, very warm." Margaret told stories like a literature teacher with taste. She asked about books, about work, not interrogating, just listening. I felt heard. Truly, she hesitated, lowering her voice. And I laughed. A lot. For the first time in months. Vanessa went quiet, her curious eyes softening. "And Jack? He's awkward in the kind of way that makes you believe him," Lily said. When his mom told that story, about the 8-year-old love letter and the future husband line, he blushed, but he didn't get defensive, didn't interrupt. He pulled out his mom's chair, arranged my spoon, and reminded the waiter to refill the water when it ran low. Nothing showy, just noticing. She exhaled as if setting a stone into its right place. And during dessert, he asked, "When's your mom arriving?" Vanessa blinked. "What?" He misheard something I joked about at the office. He thought I was bringing my mom too. Margaret laughed first. Then I couldn't stop. We laughed until we cried. And she said, "Sometimes fate only needs one small misunderstanding." Vanessa studied Lily for a long moment, weighing every word. Finally, she set her laptop down and leaned on the desk. "He sounds like a good one," she said slowly. "Not the performative kind of good, the kind that's habitual." "Exactly," Lily said softly, feeling something loosen inside her. "I think I finally saw something I'd been looking for and thought I'd given up on. A man who loves his mother genuinely, not flattering, not acting. Loving her by pulling out a chair, by waiting for her to finish speaking, by remembering to refill someone else's glass. Vanessa sighed, but it was a gentle sigh, almost relieved. All right, I'll shelve my prejudice against the guy who times coffee brewing to the second. Still, keep the cactus emoji, just in case. Keeping it, Lily smiled, tapping Vanessa's hand like a seal. I'm not naming anything yet. But last night I realized I can believe in at least one small thing again. Kindness. Vanessa nodded and handed Lily a tissue, though there was nothing to wipe away. Kindness is rare. When you find it, keep it, but at your own pace. Don't get pulled into someone else's speed. Yeah, Lily said. Slow is good. I'm not in a rush. A meeting alert pinged nearby. Vanessa stood, then turned back and placed both hands on Lily's shoulders, looking her squarely in the eye. If he texts you tonight, don't reply too fast. Wait 2 minutes. Mystery matters. Lily laughed. You forget. He's the kind of guy who can calculate page load times. My 2 minutes will read as 122 seconds. Vanessa mused, nodding. Then make it 3. Deal, Lily said, pretending to write it in the air. 3 minutes. When Vanessa left, Lily leaned back in her chair. On the edge of her monitor, the little sticky note, still alive, was still there, right beside the tiny cactus. She placed a hand over her heart, not dramatically, just to check. The rhythm was steady, not because everything was perfect, but because someone had made her laugh through honest awkwardness. For Lily, that was enough to start a new day. At lunch, she texted Jack a short message. Thank you for last night. I laughed a lot. The typing bubble appeared briefly. Me too. Mom says hi. Lily smiled, waited exactly 3 minutes, then typed. Please tell her I said thank you. That was it. Just enough. By afternoon, work pulled her back into schedules and analytics dashboards. Yet somewhere between the numbers, a quiet thought rested like a seed. Maybe she had stepped out of the land of skepticism, not to fall headlong into a romance, but to acknowledge the presence of something warm, something she'd thought only existed in books. Before shutting down her computer, Lily glanced out the window. The thin clouds had cleared, leaving a pale blue sky. She packed her things and stood up. In her mind, Margaret's voice echoed gently, sometimes fate only needs one small misunderstanding. Lily smiled. Maybe this morning was exactly that, a small thing set in just the right place in her day. Subtle, but enough to nudge her heart half a step to the right. Rumors spread like a hidden power line running through the 14th floor. By noon, someone in the pantry was half joking, half daring. Heard Jack Miller has a girlfriend? Someone else poured oil on the fire. Saw him at Restaurant X last night. Eyes on, ears open as Lily walked by, a few curious glances fluttered past like sparrows skimming a tabletop. Jack appeared in the pantry doorway, like every day, composed, even paced, a white paper cup in hand. The only difference was that today his shoulders sat a touch higher, as if someone had just set a question down on them. Good morning, he said softly, just loud enough. Good morning, a few people answered, stretching the vowels to tuck away a laugh. A male intern nudged his friend with an elbow and whispered, even the robot are in love. The hissed words slid across the tile, light but still metallic in the ear. Lily was filling her water glass. She heard it. She didn't like it. She looked up and said, her voice steady, at least he's not fake. The room paused for half a beat, as if someone had hit pause on a track. The intern's ears flushed red. He pressed his lips together. The person beside him hurried to change the subject. Anyone want a donut? Jack glanced over. The flicker of confusion in his eyes clicked off quickly. Not from coldness, but because someone had said for him what he didn't know how to say. He gave Lily a small nod. She nodded back. A quiet agreement. We can step past this without making noise. All day the buzz dotted the air like tiny marks on a page, here and there scattered. Not too many, but enough to hear. Someone teased, Miller, take the team out tonight. Keep up with the table for 3 tren. Jack chuckled lightly and replied in power save mode. I'm not great with trends. Then he bent over his screen. Lily saw the code in his eyes run a notch faster, but his hands kept their steady rhythm on the keys. By mid-afternoon, after a round of meetings, Lily got back to her desk and found a small glass jar set neatly at the edge, corked tight. Inside were tiny seeds, like punctuation marks not yet placed in a sentence. A quarterfold note was pinned outside, the familiar blue handwriting. Phalaenopsis takes time to bloom, but once it does, it lasts. Lily stopped for a beat. The little cactus in the corner seemed to nod its prickly approval. She opened the jar, catching the clean scent of glass and new dampness. There was one more line in smaller letters. If you'd like, I can help prep the soil this afternoon. No emoji, no exclamation points, just an invitation to do something slow. Vanessa poked her head over the partition, eyes bright as bulbs. What's this? Seeds? Oh my gosh, people send roses and you get the future. Phalaenopsis, Lily read again, her mouth curving on its own. Takes time to bloom. Supersized metaphor, Vanessa laughed, unable to hide her satisfaction. Honestly, I like this better than same-day flower delivery. Less showy. Yeah, Lily said, smoothing her palm over the jar's cool side, the chill spreading into her hand. She thought of Margaret. Poetry doesn't rush, and realized the gift traced a straight line back to last night, a thin line but steady. That afternoon, when the last dust of sunlight slid across the L-shaped desk edge, Jack came to the partition and tapped lightly. I've got some soil and cocoa coir pellets, he said, voice as low as always. If you'd like, we can mix them now. No smell, no mess. Okay, Lily said, bringing the jar along. They stepped out to the floor's small balcony, a narrow terrace with a few office planters. From a plastic box, Jack took out the pellets, sprinkled a little water, and waited for them to swell like small loaves of bread. He explained in short, simple phrases, avoiding jargon that might cause confusion. Orchids like air. Lots of space around the roots. We take it slow. Slow, Lily echoed, watching the tiny seeds like dots awaiting their sentence. I'll try. A colleague passed by, glanced over, nearly tossed out a joke, but met Lily's calm eyes and settled for a friendly smile before moving on. A light breeze lifted the baby hairs at her temples. The street noise below hummed like white noise. Thank you, Lily said as she corked the jar again, for the slow gift. Jack nodded, the corners of his eyes curving behind the lenses. I'm slow too. That's okay, Lily smiled. Some things, if they rush, don't stick. They went back in. In the pantry corner, someone was still talking about deadlines and KPIs. Rumors are like fleeting scents. They come and they go. But there was a seed jar on Lily's desk now, something that required time, tending, and steady presence. She set it beside the note that read, "It's working now," right where she could see it each time she lifted her head from the screen. Late in the afternoon, Vanessa pinged the office chat. Buzz cooling off. And if anyone says robot again, I'll ask whether robots carry potting mix to the balcony. Lily replied with a small smiley, and that was enough. Before leaving the office, Lily snapped a photo of the jar and sent Jack a line. I'll take care of it. A round dot appeared. I know. Sleep early tonight. Lily typed, okay then, and deleted it, then wrote again. Yes, sir, orchid grower. She drew a long breath and shut down her screen. Outside, dusk had settled. Windows across the buildings lit up like little orchids just opening. Lily stepped into the elevator feeling a rare kind of calm. Not from being celebrated, and not because rumors had buoyed her, but because amid the noise, something quiet had been set down. A metaphor clear enough to need no explanation. Love that is slow and deep, and if needed, she would wait for it to bloom, lasting like the promise of a man who doesn't say much. Late on a weekend afternoon, the sky was covered in a thin layer of clouds, soft as lace. Lily stood before the gray-painted iron gate of a red brick house, its hedge of hibiscus trimmed neatly along the walkway. She felt a flutter of nerves, not the kind that came with a date, but a gentler anticipation, the kind that came before stepping into a place with its own quiet order. In her hands was a small box of butter cookies, tied with a moss-green ribbon. The door opened before Lily could ring the bell. Margaret appeared in a cream cardigan, her silver hair neatly pinned up, her blue eyes clear as morning light. "Hello, dear," she said warmly, wrapping Lily in a hug that was just the right temperature. "I can already smell the butter." "I brought some cookies," Lily said, holding out the box. "I'm not sure if they're to your taste, but—" "I like watching others eat sweets," Margaret teased, winking. "Come in. The kettle just finished boiling." The living room was bright with light from a large window overlooking the garden. Bookshelves lined both walls like paper trees. Their colorful spines varied but never gaudy. A tea set sat on the center table. A white porcelain teapot, 2 cups, a plate of lemon slices, and a small vase with a few jasmine sprigs. The air carried a calm blend of black tea and jasmine, like a quiet duet. "Sit, dear," Margaret said, pouring tea with such precision that not a single drop spilled. "I like to start with something hot. So many stories find their right words once there's tea." Lily took her cup, feeling the warmth seep into her palms first. "Your house feels peaceful," she said, her eyes sweeping over the photographs on the shelf. A young boy in a knit hat, a bespectacled man standing beside a woman in a graduation gown. Jack and Margaret through the years. "Peaceful because it's been noisy enough," Margaret replied, half joking, half true. "When I was still teaching, the school was never quiet. But I like that noise. The sound of children learning how to say the right things in the right way." Lily smiled. "I think a lot of adults forget that. They learn how to say what's appropriate and forget how to say what's true. That's why people get lonely." Margaret nodded, setting her cup down. "Especially modern women. They're told to be strong, independent, and they are. But sometimes strength is just another way we forbid ourselves from asking for help." Lily went still, the words quietly touching a tender place inside her. "I've been like that," she admitted. "I thought asking someone to stay was a bother. So I handled things on my own. Then one day, sitting at dinner, I realized I had run out of words and no one even knew." Margaret tilted her head, her gaze both warm and patient. "That night you laughed," she said softly. "I saw it. Laughed like someone who suddenly remembered she still had a voice." "I can't even remember the last time I laughed like that," Lily said. "Thank you for guiding the conversation that night. And for—" she hesitated, then finished, "for raising Jack to notice the little things." Light shimmered in Margaret's eyes. "That was already in him. I just reminded him not to treat it as a weakness." She set down her cup, her tone slowing, ripening into a story. "Jack was bullied for being different. Quiet, not into sports, loved organizing things, loved reading. When he was 11, a group of boys pushed him into a locker and locked the door. They laughed. He stayed silent. When I arrived, he didn't cry. He just asked, 'Mom, do you think if I changed, I'd stop being different?' I told him, 'No. You'd just be different in another way. But if you choose to be kind, that's the right kind of different.'" Margaret sighed as if releasing the breath that child once held. And he chose kindness. Instead of resenting the world, he learned how to make things work. First machines, then people. Lily felt her throat tighten, not from pain but from something swelling inward. The fragments she'd seen before, the note still alive, the way he poured water, the way he pulled out a chair, all snapped together, revealing a larger picture. The boy once locked inside a cabinet who grew up to unlock the stuck hinges of life, one by one, for himself and for others. "Do you ever worry about him?" Lily asked quietly. "Because kindness can make you vulnerable." "Of course I worry," Margaret smiled, a touch of fatigue threading through it. "But I believe kindness isn't about avoiding hurt. It's a choice about how you stand up after being hurt." Jack learned that slowly, but surely. She slid the plate of cookies toward Lily. "And you? Are you afraid of getting hurt?" Lily nodded, not pretending otherwise. "Yes, I think everyone is. But lately I've realized fear isn't a reason to stop believing that good things still exist." "A sentence from someone who's found her voice again," Margaret said, smiling and lifting her cup. "Let's drink to that." They shifted to books. Margaret spoke about a poetry collection she loved. "Because poetry never hurries," she said. echoing the line from their dinner conversation. Both of them laughed. Lily talked about recent storytelling campaigns, how a well-placed sentence could hold someone's attention for just 2 more seconds, and sometimes 2 seconds were enough to change a heart's direction. Two women from different generations met at a quiet crossroad of belief. They both trusted the endurance of small things. As the sun dipped behind the hibiscus hedge, the light in the room turned honey gold. Margaret poured the final cup and spoke softly, as if closing a chapter. "I'm not a matchmaker," she said playfully, winking, "but I do like seeing two people find a shared language. You and Jack, each of you has your own rhythm. If you keep yours and listen for his, the music will come on its own." Lily smiled, her chest expanding like a window opening. "I can't promise anything except that I'll listen." "That's enough," Margaret said, standing and adjusting her cardigan. "Take some cookies for the road. And if you ever need a quiet place, this door's always open." Before leaving, Lily paused at the porch, gazing at the little garden. She heard the leaves brushing each other, and deep inside herself, a tiny sound. The click of a lock just opened. On her way home, she sent Jack a message. "Had tea with your mom this afternoon. It was very warm." The typing bubble appeared. "Thank you for going. Mom says you have great taste in tea." Lily smiled and slipped her phone back into her pocket. She understood something new. Jack's caution wasn't indifference. It was the product of someone who had chosen kindness early and never stopped. And because of that, she found herself respecting him even more. That evening, they returned to the restaurant where they'd first met. The glass doors still reflected bands of golden light, and the small metal bell gave a soft ring as it opened. Everything seemed the same as before. The pendant lamps, the white tablecloths, the scent of butter and cinnamon. Only tonight, just 2 chairs were pulled out. The server recognized them and smiled, leading them to a window table. "This time, just the two of you," he said like a gentle greeting. Lily looked at the smooth, unwrinkled cloth and felt her heart beat slow. No stumbles. "What would you like to drink?" Jack asked once they were seated, his voice low and soft as silk. "Water is fine," Lily replied. "We're going to talk a lot tonight, and I want my head clear." They ordered simple dishes, no wine, no flowers, only the soft clink of cutlery and the murmur of nearby conversations. Light from the street filtered through the glass, painting golden rectangles on the floor. "Thank you for this afternoon," Jack began after the server stepped away. "Mom texted, 'That girl knows how to listen. That's rare.'" "I'm fond of your mother too," Lily said. "She makes everything feel just enough. I don't feel like I have to work to fill the quiet." Jack nodded. "Mom is good with quiet." He glanced down at his hands for a moment, then looked back up, his eyes steadier behind the lenses. "I'm not good with words, but if there's a time to speak, it should probably be now." Lily waited, not rescuing the moment with a quick line. She set her hands on the table's edge, palms open. "I thought," Jack said slowly, "you would laugh at me. That first night, the table for 3, I pictured 1,000 scenarios. You pulling out your phone, you getting up to leave, you telling that story later as a joke. But you didn't. You made me feel good enough." "Good enough" fell without a sound, but Lily heard it ring in her chest. She understood. Some people grow up afraid of being too different, so their first standard isn't excellent or perfect, just good enough to be allowed to stay. She wanted to reach for his hand right then, but she waited for him to finish. "I misheard your joke," Jack went on, a self-deprecating smile flickering by. "But the truth is, I really did want to know how the man beside you would respect your mother. Because I know the way someone respects their mother is often how they treat the fragile things." Lily let out a small laugh. "We might have over-solemnized a joke." "Maybe," Jack shrugged, his gaze gentle. "But because of it, I met you in a way that made me believe I didn't have to play a part." A mild hush spread, settling on the tabletop like a sheen of steam. Lily leaned in, her voice low and sure. "And you made me believe that good things still exist. Not because you did anything grand, but because you noticed small things. A lot of people think kindness is a big gesture, With you, it's a habit. Jack smiled, a rare smile that reached both corners of his eyes. A habit sounds both right and boring. But it's the kind of boring I want near me, Lily said. The steady kind that makes people feel at ease. The servers set down their plates. The food released a warm aroma, but they didn't rush for their knives and forks. Lily placed her hand on the table, her fingers brushing the back of Jack's hand, as if testing the temperature. He didn't pull away. She laid her whole hand over his. Her pulse and the feel of his skin seemed to mesh like gears. There's something I want to say, Lily said slowly. I'm afraid of being hurt. I once confused being strong with not needing anyone. But when I'm with you, I don't have to perform. I want to keep my own rhythm, and I want to learn yours. We can learn slowly, Jack said. Very slowly. Phalaenopsis, Lily reminded him, smiling. They need time to bloom. But when they do, they last, Jack finished, as if the two of them were reciting a small charm together. They started eating, the tap of cutlery against the plates punctuating their talk. No wine to loosen their tongues, no flowers to tint the mood. They told each other the kinds of details that rarely make it onto ordinary dates. The time Jack broke a module by over-optimizing. The time Lily changed an entire concept at the last minute on a hunch, and was right. They spoke about familiar bus routes, little-known coffee shops, and the songs they played when they needed calm. Each story felt like a small patch of fabric, stitched together with the thread of just enough. For dessert, Lily chose the chocolate mousse because the other night was unfinished, and Jack picked a scoop of vanilla. We'll share, Lily suggested, sliding the spoon toward him. Chocolate justice is the foundation of a civilized society, she quoted Margaret, and they both laughed. Before leaving the table, Jack didn't retreat like someone afraid of breaking a spell. He looked straight at Lily, his voice low but firm. I'm not great at promises, but I can show up on time, listen to everything you say, remember to refill your water, and ask whether the system or your heart is jammed anywhere so we can fix it together. Lily gave his hand a gentle squeeze. That's enough. The kind of promises that fit in your hand are the ones I believe. When they stepped out of the restaurant, the streetlights were on, and the wind carried a hint of cinnamon from somewhere. No one rushed to take a photo. No one hurried to give it a name. They walked side by side, close enough that their hands could brush if they wished. At the corner, Lily paused for half a beat and tilted her face up to the smooth dark sky. Maybe, she said, this is a night I'll remember not because anything was dazzling, but because everything was the right size. Jack nodded, a small smile tugging at his mouth. I think the right size is a goal I understand best. Then good, Lily said, touching his hand again, because I want to love to the right size too. Back home, Lily set the orchid seed jar on the windowsill and pulled out the little note to read again. Needs time to bloom, but when it does, it lasts. She texted Jack. Tonight, I felt good enough. The typing dot appeared. Me too. Lily put her phone down and opened the window to let the breeze in. In the quiet room, one thing sounded clearest of all. No fireworks needed. Just two people, one table, gentle eyes, and words that are just enough. And that's enough to believe the good things are still here, within reach. Things didn't bloom loudly. Nothing exploded. Only small, repeated motions, gentle and consistent enough that one day Lily realized her life had quietly changed color. On Tuesday morning, her laptop froze like a lake in winter. The cursor hung in the middle of her presentation slide. The fan whirred weakly, then fell silent. Lily sighed, tapped a few more keys just to confirm defeat, and carried the machine over to Jack's desk. He looked up at her through his thin-rimmed glasses, his blue eyes calm. Give me 5 minutes, he said. Not a promise, just a quiet statement. Jack removed the screws, lifted the back panel, and placed each screw neatly in a tray as though spelling a word. He plugged in a tiny USB stick. Lines of code cascaded down the screen like rain. Lily stood beside him, hearing his steady breath, watching his sure, warm hands. 10 minutes later, the fan spun again, its faint hum like an apology. I cleared the junk files, updated the drivers, replaced the thermal paste, Jack said evenly, closing the panel and brushing away a speck of dust. Try opening your slides again. Lily clicked. Everything ran smoothly, like a newly paved road. She laughed softly, so soft only she heard it. Thank you. I'm hopeless with these things. Jack shrugged. I just make it work. You're good at making things work, Lily said, pausing before adding, even the ones that aren't machines. Jack looked up. His gaze lingered for a moment, like a musical rest between notes. He seemed to want to say something but hesitated. Lily understood that hesitation. That afternoon, she sent him a message on the company chat. If there's something you want to say but can't, just send me one word. I'll read the rest in the silence. A moment later, his reply appeared. Thanks, one word, just enough. In the days that followed, just enough became the language they learned together. Lily didn't push him to speak more. She simply asked open questions without hidden hooks. What color do you feel like today? Warm gray, Jack answered. So there's light, she teased. He smiled, a small, undeniable smile. On Thursday evening, they stopped by Margaret's house. She was zesting a lemon for the cake glaze. Perfect timing, Margaret said, setting out an extra teacup. I finally get to see my son with someone who speaks his language. She looked at Lily with affection, her eyes forming a gentle period. The language of just enough. I'm still learning, Lily said. And you, Margaret turned to Jack, are still teaching. Teaching is just another way of learning. After tea, they stepped out onto the porch, where the late-season plants held on to green with quiet persistence. Jack opened a small box, moss substrate, pine bark, charcoal. In the center, a vial of orchid seeds, tiny but precious. Let's plant them tonight, he said. No rush. But once they're in the pot, we'll have a reason to check on them every day. Lily nodded. They mixed the soil, the soft texture crumbling beneath their fingers. Jack placed each seed as carefully as punctuation at the end of a sentence. Lily misted the surface, the water forming tiny beads on the moss. They'll need time, Jack reminded her. But when they bloom, they'll last, Lily finished, smiling as if reading from memory. They both leaned over the small pot, the beginning of something slow. And so, love grew through ordinary gestures. Jack learned to write a little longer. I miss you instead of a leaf emoji. Running 5 minutes late instead of showing up unannounced. Lily learned to speak less when silence was already beautiful, and to be clear when it mattered. I need you to hug me before the big meeting. Jack nodded, and next time, he did exactly that. A short, warm, wordless hug. One day after a draining meeting, Lily sat on the hallway floor, head resting against the white wall. Jack came by, didn't ask, what's wrong? Like everyone else, just handed her a bottle of water, cap already twisted open. Drink, he said. She took a sip, the tightness in her throat easing. Thank you, she whispered. When she looked up, he was still there, not hovering, just standing near, a quiet anchor that didn't demand her to rise. Margaret often watched the two of them, smiling to herself. Once, while handing them a plate of fruit, she said, People think love is fireworks. I think it's the sound of a kettle. Steady, soft, unmistakable. Lily laughed. And there's tea. Of course, Margaret said. Love without tea is tasteless. A year passed, one long, full breath. That afternoon, Margaret's house smelled of apple pie. On the table sat the black teapot in a vase of jasmine. In the garden, the orchid had matured, its leaves sleek as silk, one flower opening, cream white with a golden throat. We're celebrating the day of misunderstanding, Margaret declared, raising the teapot. I think it deserves a ritual. Her eyes sparkled mischievously, just like the night she first met Lily. If not for that silly joke, she said, smiling at Lily, I wouldn't have such a wonderful daughter-in-law. Lily blushed, laughing. I never thought love could be this gentle, she said, her voice softening at the word gentle. Not light because it was hollow, but light because it was shared. Jack sat beside her, his hand finding hers. He didn't speak, only squeezed gently, a silent, I'm here. Lily turned to him, meeting the warm, steady glow she knew so well. Margaret placed a small box on the table. Inside was an old yellow drawing, a house, a bookshelf, a window facing east. I think it's time to pass down the artifact, she said, half joking, half solemn. The original blueprint of the future husband, age 8. Jack flushed but grinned. Lily traced the paper's edge with her fingertip. A window that faces the light, she murmured. Beautiful. They raised their cups. Outside, the late sun filtered through the leaves, scattering golden dots across the floor. Margaret clinked cups with Lily, then Jack. On behalf of fate and all its mischiefs, she said, mock formal, her tone full of joy. Jack refilled Lily's cup. The amber tea streamed out like a story reaching its final page. He lifted his own, touched it lightly to hers. A small ting, the same sound their story began with, a spoon against a cup. To fate and its strange ways, he said. To fate, Lily echoed, her eyes smiling. And to slowness. They drank. The tea wasn't too hot, just warm enough to spread to the chest. A breeze slipped through the curtains, brushing the orchid. The first bloom trembled slightly, as if nodding to an unspoken answer. Everything was in its right place. That night, when they returned home, Lily set the old drawing beside the small pot they had planted a year ago. She opened the window, letting the scents of leaves and leftover tea blend together. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jack. I just thought of something and had to say it before I forget. Thank you for making me feel good enough every day. Lily replied, thank you for making things work, even the ones inside me. She set the phone down and leaned her forehead against the window frame. Below, the yellow streetlights dusted the pavement like sugar. On the sill, the white orchid stood still, steady, blooming in its own season. Sweet, witty, warm, healing, not a firework, just the steady boil of a kettle. And if anyone asked, Lily would say, love isn't a performance. It's how two people learn each other's language, slowly, patiently, until one day they raise their cups, smile, and believe in the gentle detours of fate.